So this is the biggest commission I've ever taken on. Over 30 images, 70 plus clips, and a full video interview, all for a single project, and all of it built and visualized in D5. It was intense and honestly one of the most demanding projects I've ever worked on. With so many specifics that really pushed me, everything had to feel right. Materials, atmosphere, and even how the building would be perceived before it even exists. In this video, I want to show you how I handled all of this. I'll show you my workflow, the behind the scenes, the files here, and even some tricks that made this all possible. This video is going to be a little bit different though. I'll take you with me through the full process from here in the studio to a cafe where I still got to finish some of the clips, and then to the meeting with the architects to reveal everything live. So there you will get to see a bit of how I actually work day to day, not just what happens here behind this desk. And if you do any type of visualization work at any level really, there's a lot you can learn here and then apply to your own projects. Okay, so all of the images you see here were commissioned by Olmo Arquitetos together with Maya Real Estate Development. The project is called Apus and they just broke ground, and so construction is now underway. These visuals were made to help launch the building and start closing sales, and this project carries a strong ecological concept with natural paint facade, cement tiles, biodiverse vegetation, and even these small bee houses made by a local ceramist. And all of that needed to come through in the visuals, not in an obvious way, of course, but subtly, through light, color, atmosphere. And this is where things start to get interesting, because translating these ideas into images and videos is not always straightforward. And also interesting to know is that this is not the first time that I've worked with Olmo. I've done visuals for one of their previous real estate developments as well. And it's always a pleasure to work with them because their projects have a strong sense of identity. Now, with a project this big and a deadline this short, workflow becomes everything. From hardware to software, it needs to handle heavy work in a stable way. And for this project, I just knew I couldn't afford slowdowns or crashes in the middle of the process. And so I'm very happy to say that this video is sponsored by HP, Intel, and D5. I've been working on the HP Z2 G1i workstation and the HP ZBook Fury 16 G1i. They handle everything really well. They're very powerful, and I'll show you more as we go, but this setup allowed me really to focus on the work instead of worrying about performance. And it's also AI optimized for workflows that are starting to include these tools. Now, in terms of software here in this project, everything started in ArchiCAD, a BIM software. That's how Olmo does all of their drawings and detailing. I then exported from there to SketchUp just to simplify a few things, to be able to work with more assets and honestly just make the model more render ready without the rigidity of a BIM software. I then also used Blender for a very specific situation, also a few extra assets. I'll show you this quick trick later in the video, by the way. And well, of course, D5 to handle all the realism and make the visuals come to life. Then Photoshop at the end for all of the post-production, and then Premiere Pro for all of the video production. It was a few intense weeks of work, not gonna lie. And even now, some parts are still evolving. And I know that there's no way for me to show you everything. I really wanted to, but I then decided to share what I think is the real value to you guys. Okay, so that hopefully you learn from this video. And if you have any specific questions about anything that I didn't share about the visuals and the clips, you can always ask me in the comments below. So let's get into the details here, and to get started, let me show you my setup here, because once I shared that over Instagram stories, you guys were very interested to know more about that. So the HP Z2 workstation is where most of the heavy work happens. This was honestly a huge upgrade for me, and what I noticed right away is how stable everything feels, even when scenes just started to get really complex. And then having a second machine as the HP Fury 16 as my portable setup has been incredible. It's what I use when I'm working away from the desk, checking progress on the go, or really even traveling. Both are running D5, and honestly this combo has been super stable for handling everything, any file size and every architectural related work you're going to be needing. Both machines are powered by Intel's Core Ultra 9 processor and paired with high-end GPUs, so they're built for this kind of workload. I don't want to go too deep into the specs here, but I'll leave some useful links in the video description in case you want to check these workstations out. But obviously for this type of project, having this level of performance here makes a real difference. Now let's talk about the project here, because I know that each project has its own challenges. And for this one specifically, from the brief and talking to the architects, I knew that vegetation was going to be one of the most important parts. So I started directly on it. It's one of the parts that I dedicated the most time to be honest. The design team envisioned a very natural landscape, something very biodiverse with lots of native species that kind of attracts bees and helps keep the ecosystem active. Most landscape designs nowadays focuses only on aesthetic and mostly it, but this one aims to bring nature back into the urban environment. And it was a lifesaver having such a big library of natural assets inside D5. And I usually now in this step go all in into the scatter tool. For me, it's one of the most powerful tools inside D5. But for this arrangement specifically here, I only use scatter for the grass itself, the ground cover. And then for bushes and plants, I went manual. I know it's slower and definitely more tedious, but when clients, the architects are this specific, like these ones are, it's better to have full control, or at least to mix, a little bit of scatter and a little bit of manual placement. Now, the street trees are their own story because there are these big, very old trees covered in ivy and bromeliad. So I had to build that look myself by layering different assets inside D5. I know it's not perfect, but it resembles the actual site. And then on the balconies, they wanted something that was low maintenance, this very specific species, the Rosalia, which are these red fluffy plants that hang and cascade beautifully. And there's this Araucaria tree here as well, just behind the site that needed to be shown too. And by the way, a quick plug here, if you want to learn this whole process to fully master architectural visualization, I've got a full course on D5 that teaches you everything in detail. And you also get a 1 month of D5 Pro once enroll in the course. I highly recommend it. I'll leave everything in the video description for you to see more information about the course. Now think of vegetation placement also with the scenes you're creating, right? You should still obviously follow how you will look once built, but you can stage it in a bit so that the images and clips look even better. Like for example, adding weeds or flower based on the scene or the camera position. Make sure that you add a lot of variation and overall landscape design really. Think that nature is not perfect, there's no repetition, so that should give you a more realistic landscape design. Now there's a lot more I could cover about vegetation really here, but I need to get going for the meeting with the architects. We're going to be reviewing some clips as I said, and I'll be exporting from this file here. I'm just doing a bit of organization, taking advantage of the layers, the objects list, and specifically here the scene grouping so that I can handle the file a little bit better live with the architects. And I'll just add an extra SSD here to the laptop in case I decide to export things there. This is something that I really liked about these machines is that they are upgradable. You can quickly pop the back here of the laptop or the side of the desktop and add more RAM or more storage. I know it's a simple thing, but that means that the machine can grow with your projects. Okay, we'll stop at a cafe for some coffee and I'll bring you guys with me and the laptop. Now, one of the trickiest parts of this project was this stone wall that runs all around the site. It sounds simple, but the design team was very specific about it. And when visuals are used to sell a project, you can fake something like this. So I had to figure out a way to build something that felt very natural without looking repetitive or artificial. I then decided to bring Blender into the process, and after watching a bunch of tutorials, trying different methods and everything, I landed on simply doing a simulation with various low poly rocks I carved out. I dropped them in this funnel and this empty wall shell kind of thing. And again, I know it sounds complicated, but it's just a rigid body simulation, and I'll let the simulation do its thing here. And it can get really heavy working with these many polygons and simulations, but the Fury 16 handled it without slowing things down. And that's important because stepping away from the desk only works if you can keep the same pace, right? And as workflows start to get more complex and include AI-assisted designs and creation, having a machine that is built to support those workloads becomes really important. And these HP workstations are designed for that. It's pretty cool, right? I did also many tests with other rock shapes as well, inflate simulations. I mean, Blender is really versatile. I then exported as a Collada file, then brought that to SketchUp and handed this to the architects so they could draw and pick the exact shape that they wanted. And instead of something predictable, you get a lot of randomness that feels much more natural, and you don't spend as much time trying to manually do this in SketchUp or Rhino. And I know this is very specific, but it was part of the challenge, so I felt that I needed to share this with you. And then maybe this can also open your mind to using Blender for other stuff, or even just using as a way to make assets low poly and so that they are not as heavy. For example, if they are secondary elements, just as the Araucaria tree, for example, using the decimate modifier here. Now I have this other very cool trick that I want to show you, how to get this random color on the rocks and on the cement tiles. Like, it's a simple thing, but it looks really good, right? It really changed the result. I used a simple SketchUp plugin to randomly pick surfaces, and then I applied a variation of 4 materials. It could be more, it could be less, but 4 for me worked out really well. And you could obviously then do this in Rhino as well. But then once you get to D5, you have all of these materials, and it's just you do one base, and then for the others, you shift the lightness and saturation in each one to give a subtle variation to the material. It's very simple and very effective. And you can also do this with, for example, changing the roughness or the specular and get a variation of reflectivity for the cement tiles, for example. And you won't imagine what kind of maps I used for these cement tiles. A garbage plastic bag material. Yeah, can you believe it? I mean, well, mainly the normal map was needed to get this look. But the main thing that I want you to take out of this is that don't be limited, be creative, because either if you're using materials from the D5 library or external libraries, you can always adapt it and adjust it to your specific situation. That's usually what I do. Okay, so the file is pretty much ready here, and for the interview we're putting together, we'll probably need something like 70 plus clips or 80 clips. Something like this. It's a lot, so I want to make sure that we're aligned before exporting everything. That's why we're doing this review stage. All right, let's get to the meeting and see what they think about all of this. And so now at Olmo's office, instead of just showing static images to them, I opened the full D5 file live with them, and this completely changed the dynamic. That way we could look around and navigate the space in real time, and you get that live preview with the path tracer, so all the realism is already there in the viewport. We sketched over some potentially new camera angles. They explained how this new area might change later, and we even adjusted some materials and settings together. Then we also got to spend some time in their BIM model in ArchiCAD, which was really interesting to see because after focusing so much on the visuals and atmosphere, it's a different perspective to look at the building as a system with all of the technical layers working together behind the scenes. You can see everything in 3D, but then as architects, we know how powerful a well-drawn section can be. Sometimes it explains even more than the model itself, right? All right, quick and productive meeting. Much better than doing this over Zoom or just sending images and waiting for feedback. This became much more collaborative. All right, back at the studio here, and after reviewing everything with the architects, it's time to export the clips. And I like to break these down into small, short clips of 5 to 10 seconds. And I prefer to do it individual like this, and then always set the camera motion to linear for a more realistic and cinematic look, especially if you're going for a video composition later. I then place everything here into the render queue, and since there are so many, I find it easier just to batch them all at once. And this is also one of my favorite features of D5 Render, a very flexible render queue. The Z2 workstation here, and honestly the laptop as well, they handle 4K clips really quickly and really well. And when you're working at this scale, this speed makes a lot of difference. Now, since I'll be chopping them up later in the interview video and I've got these powerful machines, I've added a few extra seconds on some clips so that I'm sure that I've got enough material for the video editing process. And by the way, you can see that I've got a bunch of different moods here with the scenes, right? A great tip inside D5 is just using the AI atmosphere match to try different possibilities really quickly. So you get a reference image, and then you add that to the tool, and then you were able to iterate really fast. And then from here, you can further tweak this or just build the scene from scratch, but then already with the vision in mind. And well, after the clips are rendered, something that I do with pretty much every image inside D5 is just take advantage of the AI enhancer. It's fine-tuned to architecture, so it doesn't produce any AI slop, you know, and it's all built inside the program, which is always handy. And I like it especially for the vegetation. For me, it just adds an extra layer of realism that is unmatched. And still, I always bring my images into Photoshop for further tweaking. I like to treat my visuals as actual photos, you know. Digital photos, of course, but here I like to do corrections, adjustments, and really bring the image together with my style. It takes a bit of time, not gonna lie, but for me, it's non-negotiable. And the thing that allows me more or less post-production, honestly, is just how much time you have. I always do at least a little bit, you know, even if it's just a camera raw filter, or if I have a lot of time, I'll do a lot more. And so after all of the testing, all of the renderings, all of the adjustments, all of the settings, these are the final results. But more than just the images, this project also turned into a full video interview. And all of the clips that you are seeing here were part of building that final piece. So it's not just about the single frames, it's about creating a sequence, a narrative, a story that can actually communicate the project over time. And these visuals started as empty scenes, and now they help to tell a story of a real building called Apus, a real idea that's about to exist. And well, I gotta be honest that with the commission this size, you don't have time to give every image the same amount of time, the same attention. Some, especially the exteriors, became my favorites. Others, unfortunately, I wish I had more time. But I guess that's part of the process. Every big job teaches you to focus on what matters the most, but you just gotta keep it consistent. You gotta keep the story consistent across all visuals. All right, let me know what you think about the results. If you do something differently, I'll leave some of my favorite images in the video produced as a separate link in the video description. Behance and all of that so that you can see them with more time and full resolution in case you're interested. I'll see you guys in the next one.